Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's video. It's JMA Friday, so we're going to have a look at the weather for the coming month from a Japanese model. Takes us to around the 19th of February, so getting well on into the final month of the winter. We'll also have a look at the chance of a big northerly plunge coming through later next week. Sometime around next weekend, say the 30th, 31st January, 1st of February, we could pull down a really potent northerly wind. I don't think it's going to last too long. I think we should very quickly cut the northerly supply off as we go through the first week of February and sort of turn it milder, but for a few days it could get really cold. I'll show you the charts in a moment. A very potent northerly could be on the way for late next week, around a week today. Before we get on with that, just want to say about the ads. There's links to articles on most of the pages at gasweather.com. The widget sits just underneath the weather video here on my homepage, so have a browse through, and if there's anything there that you're interested in, just click through and generally have a look at the ads, play around with them, see what you think, if there's anything that you're interested in. Thanks so much for doing that. And just say about the links page, the link to the Japanese model, if you want to see these charts for yourself, can be found on the links page. Don't forget the links page. It's one of the pages that I'm most proud of really, Gazweather, is because there's a lot of useful links there going off to most of these longer range websites that we use at Gazweather. So do check out the links page if there's anything there that you want to see for yourself. Thanks so much for doing that. Right, well, let's start off with the Japanese model. We're going to have a look at the 500 millibar height anomalies for the coming month, broken down into weekly periods. As you know, the first weekly period will take us from the week that we're currently in, which is going to be the 22nd to the 29th of February. Now, blue is extrapolating to low pressure, of course, orange, yellow and red extrapolating to high pressure. So for the week that we're currently in, we find that we've got a deep trough of low pressure up to the north and northwest, indicated by those blue curves. A big ridge of high pressure down around the Azores, very strong Azores high. I was talking about this in the video yesterday. The Azores high is the real driver of the weather this winter, and as long as this high pressure is here around the Azores, it's going to be difficult to maintain sort of cold weather, because that's why it's going to try and push winds back into west. Notice also got this deep trough of low pressure for these blue curves over in the east of the United States, so they're in for another cold northerly plunge over the coming week. The jet stream is going something like this. It's going around that trough in the east of the states, then coming out into the Atlantic, and then running through the British Isles, something like that. So bringing the jet stream more or less through the country, and it's very unsettled. Probably quite mild overall, although later on it could turn cold as this trough sort of pushes eastwards in towards Scandinavia. So have a look at the next weekly period. This takes us from the 29th to the 5th of February. What we find for this one is that the trough is deepening and becoming centred more or less over the top of the country. Now, it doesn't look a great, like there's a great difference there, but this is a colder sort of solution because the trough is sinking right down over the country. The ridge is flattening off as well a little bit and going down to the south. So everything basically is being shoved or shunted southwards, and around that trough we probably bring colder air in, something like that. It's not a desperately cold flow, because the actual northern blocking is on the other side of the pole, really, over towards the Pacific side. But yeah, that's a colder solution. The trough is sinking southwards. There's colder air being entrenched into that trough of low pressure, and this, I think, is picking up on this northerly plunge I was talking about at the start of the video that could be on the way for around a week's time. Now, as we go through to the final couple of weeks, this takes us from the 5th to the 19th of February. What we find with this one is that the flow is reverting back westerly again. So the ridge is strengthening around the Azores and pushing up in towards Spain, Portugal and the Bay of Biscay, which is just here. The trough of low pressure to the south of Greenland. The flow is going something like that, so we're more or less running it just to the northwest of the country, probably. Actually, so we're more or less on the mild side of the jet with that. So that could be a little bit, I don't want to go too over the top, but that could be a little bit of a taste of spring perhaps there through the middle part of February. Not what cold lovers want at all, really, that with the high pressure strengthening, the height strengthening down to the south and the southwest. That could just be a very little foretaste of spring. Although, again, we've got a lot of yellow up here over the top of the pole, and it probably wouldn't take much of an adjustment, actually, for this high pressure, which is in there over the top of the pole, to start bringing down colder air. So quite how long that little warm up around minimum would last, I don't know. With so much yellow up there over the top of the pole, it wouldn't take much of an adjustment there to start turning it colder. Now, I did say at the start of the video that we've got the chance of a cold northerly plunge coming up at the end of next week, so in around a week's time. These are the 500 mm height anomalies for the next 8 to 10 days. So this one takes us up to the 3rd of February, this particular chart. We've got the east-end Earth here on the left, of course. The GFS is over on the right. 500 millibars, as we just saw with the JMA model, is where weather is taking place. You've got high pressure, low pressure being moved around by adjustment. Just with the JMA model, or just the same, I should say, as the JMA model, red extrapolates high pressure, blue extrapolates low pressure. So what we're seeing with this one is that we've got this big ridge of high pressure in the Atlantic. Of course, we saw it on the JMA around the Azores. This is pushing it northwards, deep trough of low pressure in the east of the states, and then this very, very deep trough of low pressure sitting around and just to the east of the country. So the flow here is going something like that. It's very hard to make out the British Isles actually on this because the colours are so intense, but we're more or less in this sort of zone just here. The flow is going like that around that trough of low pressure with the ridge in the Atlantic. We're more or less on the cold side of the jet there in 8 to 10 days time, pulling down a northerly wind as this trough pushes eastwards. The GFS is very similar game, a cold trough in the eastern states, the ridge in the central part of the Atlantic, and then this very deep trough of low pressure out to the east and the northeast of the country. That even goes to the Perth because that's a really deep trough being indicated there. And the upshot of all of that really is that we would start to pull down northerly winds with that trough of low pressure. So the flow would go into the north like that, and yeah, we'd be pulling down quite a bit of northerly wind. Again, with the ridge of high pressure sitting just to the west of the country, very quickly I think we would start to turn the flow westerly once again, because the ridge, the Azores High, is the main driver of all of this. So quite quickly it would try to establish, or want to establish, a westerly flow once again. So I don't think that northerly would last too long, but it could be really quite a potent one, because if you follow the colours back, the air with that trough originates from the central part of the North Pole. So for a few days we could really feel it. This is the GFS temperature and precipitation ensemble chart. The red line here is the 30-year temperature average. Going to be a bit up and down with the temperatures over the coming few days, next week or so. Got a little bit of a zonal sine wave showing up there with warmer and colder sectors coming through. But then as we get to around, say, the 30th of January, something like that, which is just there, we're seeing a notable drop in the temperature ensemble, and that stays with us really for quite a few days as we go out into the start of February. This is the 3rd of February just here, and this is generally looking like quite a coldish sort of interlude. Again, it's from the north, so it would be the north that is generally at risk of the snow coming through, although you could penetrate some of those snow showers further south, but it's mainly the north on this sort of scenario that's at risk of snow showers, unless some sort of a polar low or disturbance develops, and then you can get snow more widely. But overall the north looks like getting it, but I think we're all going to feel it if it comes off. So this is the GFS generic chart for the 29th of January, and we've got this deep area of low pressure to the north of the country powering in towards Scandinavia. The ridge is down across the Azores, so it's all sort of westerly based, but the flow is beginning to back into the northwest. As we move on into the 30th of January, the trough, a deep trough, is pushing towards Scandinavia. We're starting to open the floodgates to a colder northwesterly wind, and then we get through to the final day of January, Saturday the 31st, and we do open the floodgates then to that northerly flow coming down across the country. And there we are on the 1st of February, Sunday the 1st, really pulling down a bitterly cold northerly wind. If you follow the isobars back, you can see that the air originates right at the very top of the chart, right in the central part of the North Pole. So that's going to be very cold air coming down across the country next weekend, and we maintain that out to day 10 just about, although even by then the high pressure is beginning to just flatten off a little bit, starting to drift back down towards the Azores. The ridge is sort of collapsing and low pressure is trying to return, the flow into the west of the Atlantic. Nevertheless, up to Monday the 2nd of February, it's still generally quite cold. But there we go, by Wednesday the 4th, we're actually backing in towards more of a westerly flow then, as milder air is trying to come in off the Atlantic. Of course, that could produce fun and games. You may get a snow event as it tries to turn milder. But it doesn't last long. That normally is quite quickly, after 2 or 3 days, very potent, cut off. The east area is very similar. Here we are on Thursday the 29th, putting down that northwesterly flow. Deep troughs of low pressure up to the north and the northeast of the country. We go through to Friday the 30th and in towards Saturday the 31st of January, and we are opening the door to that northerly wind. Really deep troughs of low pressure pushing into Scandinavia. That could bring lots and lots of heavy snow for them, and some of that could get down into central parts of Europe as well. I know I do have some people watching from Germany and central parts of Europe. You could get a real bout of heavy snow from this as we go through towards the end of next week. But that trough is pushing off in towards Central Europe and Scandinavia, opening the door to this northerly wind. And that's a very bitter cold northerly wind blasting down across the country as we go through to certainly the 1st of February, bringing lots of heavy snow showers into the north. This is there is low pressure around to the south of Greenland. It's interesting. That runs into that cold air on day 10, Monday the 2nd, and that could produce some snow as it comes in. Of course, we would have to see exactly how the milder air and the colder air, or warm and cold sectors, are sort of handling each other and how they're integrated with each other to pinpoint where the risk of snow will be. But as the low pressure comes into that cold air, it could produce snow, and then you get the idea as that low pressure exits probably on Tuesday the 3rd of February. We would, again, if we could go any further than this, we can't, but if we could, we would probably pull down another northerly blast as that low pressure clears through. And then the GEM, it's all very similar. Going through to the final few days of January, we're putting down this cold and northwesterly wind. We do end up in a northerly by Sunday the 1st of February, a proper bitter northerly, actually a little bit northeasterly with that, which was a little bit different with GEM. And we stay cold as we get through to Monday the 2nd of January. So I think that's what we're looking at. We've got pretty good agreement on this coming off. It's a little way off, of course, so let's not get too carried away with it, but amongst the big three, the GFS, the GEM and the ECM, there's pretty good agreement that we're going to get this northerly wind. In between now and then, it's generally going to be fairly mildish, really, and quite unsettled, particularly the north and the west. Then we pull down this northerly as we get through in towards the end of next week and next weekend. February could start off on a very cold note, probably won't last all that long, go back into the west, and the suggestion from the JMA running up to the middle part of February is that it could turn a little bit milder and more settled, particularly down in the south and the southwest. I'll be doing a detailed weekend forecast tomorrow, so come back for that. No doubt we will be looking at this risk of a very cold end to next week, so come back for that. That's all now, and thanks for watching.